show, podcast, and he's editor of the Daily Wire. And he created the whole thing and moved it across the country. Ben, how does it feel to take on the government and win?
We here at Daily Wire are really excited about this. I mean, the fact is that we really put our money where our mouth was. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight the Biden vax mandate in court. We were the first company in America to file a federal lawsuit against the Biden vax mandate on major businesses. And watching them going down in flaming defeat is well worth that cost. Joe Biden, by the way, his approval rating, more people now like certain types of bowel cancer than like Joe Biden at this point. I think that's well deserved.
Wow.
Well, so going forward, given what the Supreme Court said yesterday, it will be up to every business now to decide whether or not they're going to have a mandate, but it won't be mandated, to overuse the word, by OSHA. It would just be from the company. So going forward, we heard this morning that apparently Citibank, based in New York City, they're going to keep the mandate. They've got 99% of their employees vaccinated, and they say, you know what, we think it's a good policy. So it's going to be up to every company now to decide how they're going to manage this pandemic going forward, because we've seen the vaccines are not as effective, perhaps, as we were sold. So people have got to figure out how to manage coronavirus, maybe forever.
Well, this is one of the big problems here, is that the vaccines are not preventing infection. They're preventing hospitalization and death, and that's wonderful and very important, but they're not preventing infection, which means that a lot of these vax mandates, which were designed to slow the spread, don't in fact achieve their stated purpose. And what the government was threatening to do was essentially put businesses completely underground. I mean, destroy the businesses if you didn't force your employees to vax or regularly tested masks. We weren't willing to do that at Daily Wire, and I can tell you that our Daily Wire offices in Nashville, people were crying as they watched the decision come down, because people literally thought that they were going to lose their jobs over this sort of stuff. And it was not just our employees. I mean, there are literally tens of millions of people across the country who felt exactly the same way. So we're proud to have stood for that, and we're certainly glad the Supreme Court ruled the right way on this. By the way, it is worth noting here that if not for the fact that President Trump was able to appoint 3 justices, there is no question that the administrative state would be able to do whatever the hell it wants in this country. There were 3 leftist judges on the Supreme Court who said that OSHA could, with pretty much no statutory authority, create a vax mandate for 100 million workers. Those same 3 justices said last year that the CDC could just issue eviction moratoria indefinitely. If you had another 2 left justices on top of that, that would essentially say the executive branch under a Democrat could do anything it damn well pleased, so long as it called it an emergency.
Great point.
Yeah, you're right. Well, it was a big blow for Joe Biden yesterday, but it's not the only one that he's experienced yesterday or this week. It's been one of the worst weeks, if not the worst week of his presidency, except for maybe Afghanistan. But let's go over some of the things that happened this week that weren't good for him. The CDC fact checks liberal justices pushing the vaccine mandates. Americans lose their faith in the CDC. Finding a COVID test is really hard. Record cases across the country. Hospitals reaching capacity. POTUS pivots to voting rights with a speech even members of his own party panned. Stacey Abrams didn't show up for that event in Georgia, in her own state, on her own issue. Inflation hits a 4-decade high. Consumers complain about all the bare shelves at our grocery stores. Stories about a 2024 ticket without Biden or Harris. Harris mocked for that rough TV interview yesterday. POTUS stumbles through the teleprompter at the COVID event and asks for the czar's name. He didn't even know his name. POTUS admits voting rights bill will likely fail as Senator Sinema takes on the floor before he arrives even at the Hill to talk to her about it. Senator Manchin tells reporters that he hasn't talked to the president since before Christmas, and that there is no renegotiation of the Build Back Better. SCOTUS knocks down the vaccine mandate for private businesses over 100 employees. National Security Advisor announced no further talks with Russia as the Russians get more aggressive, Ben. And then 2 more things. Right, 2 more things. North Korea fires fresh missiles that are lashing out over our U.S. sanctions, the 3rd round of those. DHS announces 104,000 migrants between March and August of 2021. And only 50,000 were checked in with ICE. Sorry for the long list, but our producers put all of that together, spent a lot of time. We wanted to read it to you and just show the people how bad this week was for the president. What's your reaction?
I mean, Joe Biden's presidency has fallen and it cannot get up. He has a serious problem on his hands. He came into office making two specific promises that he just could not keep. One is that you could spend your way out of a problem that did not exist, namely the economic recovery that was going to take place regardless of how much money we spent, and he inflated the economy beyond its capacity. Now we have massive inflation. And the second promise he made is that the government would be able to, quote unquote, shut down the virus. It was a lie when he told it. He continues to maintain that lie, and he has boxed himself in. He cannot get out of this. These are all problems of his own making. He could control the border if he wanted to, but he doesn't want to control the border. He can't control the virus because no one can control the virus. He could leave the economy alone and just let it grow, but he can't do that either. He has created this box, and now he cannot get out of it, and so he's railing at the wind and shouting at the clouds like Grandpa Simpson and trying to convince everybody that the 7 in 10 Americans who don't like him must be segregationists. No wonder this guy is so unpopular.
Ben, the fact is he's got the job for 3 more years. We're hostage to it. If you are him, and we watch Bill Clinton pivot, we've watched other presidents pivot, and you go back in history, it constantly happens. So Bill Clinton actually recommended to him, go back with Build Back Better, pick 2 things you want and reintroduce it. And he goes, pull back. So if you're him, you got to fire everyone, beginning with Ron Klain. Whoever loaded the prompter for that speech in Georgia has to be fired. Whoever sent him to Capitol Hill while Senator Sinema was on the floor has to be fired. His staff is as inept as his speeches. So where do you go from here with 3 more years?
I mean, the biggest problem for Joe Biden is that, forget his staff. Joe Biden, his entire image was that he was gentle, empathetic grandpa. And then he allowed Afghanistan to fall to 8th century cavemen and got 13 American service members killed and left hundreds of Americans behind. And that image was gone. And then he decided that he was going to call everyone who disagreed with him on federalization of all voting procedure a segregationist or a slaveholder. And now it's really gone. His image has been so tarnished at this point that I don't think that he can pivot to the center the same way that Bill Clinton did. Bill Clinton never lost the image, at least early on in his presidency, of at least being this sort of genial person who felt your pain. Joe Biden has lost that, and once you lose it, I'm not sure you can regain it.
We're doomed.
You know, Ben, ultimately, I think a lot of people who voted for Joe Biden have buyer's remorse. And now, fast forward to close to the end of his first year in office, people are going, now, why did we pick him again? And it was because he ran as a moderate. But once he got into office, then suddenly the leftists in his party and the people he installed in the White House pulled him so far to the left. I think if he goes more into the lane where he ran, I don't know that he would win re-election, but I think certainly his poll numbers would go up because I think a lot of people, you know, they're smacked in the face with the inflation and everything else, and it hits them all day. Bad decisions by this administration impact me all day, whether I'm in the grocery store, whether I'm at the gas station, whether I'm wearing a mask somewhere, all day, Ben.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, listen, he made a historic political blunder by deciding to move to his left in an attempt to be LBJ or FDR when he had 50 senators plus Kamala Harris and a very slim House majority. He did not have a mandate to do the Bernie Sanders routine. It was amazing. He beat Bernie Sanders because he was not Bernie Sanders, and then he allowed Bernie Sanders to body snatch him. And suddenly he was doing Bernie Sanders' agenda. Well, that was never going to be a success. The only way that he has a possibility of re-election, or that any successor of his has a possibility of re-election, is if he abandons his grand and glorious dreams of being a historic president and just goes back to being what he was theoretically supposed to be, which was a caretaker president who was just not going to be Trump. I mean, that was essentially his pitch. I'm a dead guy who's not Trump. And it kind of worked, but it turns out that as much as he may be close to not being alive, at least in image, he certainly had a very live political agenda that has alienated an enormous number of people.
Ben, thank you so much for coming on. Great job.
Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Congratulations on the win.